Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wrap Up Live. This is your Raptors Republic post-game live show. I'm here with none other than the Podfather himself. Zarar is here. He is here to grace us with his presence. We have Chris Howson-Jan in the background as our producer tonight. The art guys, hey, Chris chooses the art, so Chris gets all the credit and he gets all the flack as well. So if you guys like it, that's on Chris. If you hate it, it's on Chris. Zarar, really quick. The Raptors won pretty easy game against a very bad basketball team, the Orlando Magic, 102-89. I missed a portion of this game. However, I'm kind of glad I did because as far as I know, the first half was ugly. The Raptors did start to inch away from the Orlando Magic at the end of the second quarter. But really, this was just one of those games where it was just a really good basketball team versus a really bad basketball team. Orlando is just devoid of any sort of star talent. It's just a bunch of young guys playing together. Not really all that fun to watch. I still don't know how they beat us earlier on in the season. But Zarar, you watched this game, and you're here with me. And I know you were bored at times, but what did you think overall?
Well, the only reason I watched this game is because you couldn't find another co-host. So viewer, if you see me on the show, it means like these guys have tried calling like 10 other people and everybody is busy.
True.
So I'm here. So when they told me that, hey, you got to watch the game because we got to talk about it. So I did the old fast forward through League Pass. So you start the game at halftime, but you start it from the beginning. So you fast forward through all the commercials. So basically you can get the whole game in about an hour and 20 minutes instead of like the regular 2.5 hours. So I did one of those for this. And in these games, it's always as a Raptor fan with a Raptors interest with the postseason coming up. I guess the only thing that was going through my mind as I was watching this was like, what kind of actions are Orlando running, or what kind of things are they doing that if another team in the postseason might do it, it might bother us? Like what are some of our kind of points where we can fall over? Because the Raptors are an excellent team. Like they play like a team. They rely on each other. They seem to be on the same page. Even today we saw like Fred and Achiuwa get on the same page on a couple of times, which is encouraging. And the only thing that I could kind of come up with was if another team, like we are not very good at running pick and rolls. No. It's really, we're quite poor at it. And if the game ends up slowing down in the postseason, where we don't force a lot of turnovers like we did in the first half today, especially Fred, whose hands he must have glue on them because he can rip the ball from anybody, man, in big, small, up high, low, it doesn't matter. He has the reach to get it. If for some reason we're not able to generate turnovers and the game slows down, our pick and roll makes me very, very wary. Other than that, I thought this was complete domination.
Yeah, and the odd part about the pick and roll was the fact that in the spurts where Toronto could not score in the half-court setting, they just kept going back to the pick and roll, and it wasn't working. And then they finally realized that, and were like, okay, let's go into ISO, and everybody gets a free turn. So it was like, okay, Gary, your turn. And then it was Fred, and then it was Pascal, and then Pascal airballs a shot. And it's like, I was waiting for Toronto to just really grind in, because this could have easily been a 30, honestly, even 40-point win. Like, that's how bad Orlando looked tonight. But I feel like the Raptors just kept, every time it became a 15, 16-point game, oh my God, is that an Arsenal mug? Every time that became a 15, 16-point game, the Raptors kept inching away, and it would get really close to 20, and then Orlando would make a run. And it just kept going back and forth and back and forth. Orlando would cut it to 10 or 11, and then the Raptors would cut it back to 17, right? So it was just back and forth all game long. I think in this game, for me, the most encouraging thing was Fred's shooting. For me, I just felt like his legs were not there these last couple of weeks. We talked about that ad nauseum with Aiden. I talked about that with Kyle. He was just getting no lift on his shot, and it was getting to the point where he wasn't even confident in shooting it in some games. So in this game, it was good. He did shoot 7 for 19, and you could tell like 16 of those 19 shots were threes. Like, that's Fred trying to tell you that, look, I know the playoffs are coming, and I'm going to try my best to get in a rhythm as soon as humanly possible. Like you said, those are defensively, Fred was a menace. It was 5 steals, but it really genuinely felt like 10
Yeah.
for Fred. Gorilla glue on his hands, plus 30, second to only Scottie Barnes in this game, who also, I think, had a very quiet but productive 19.8 rebounds, 7 assists game. For you, Zarar, when you look at this entire game, what was probably the most encouraging thing from Scottie or Fred in that case?
Well, I mean, I think with Fred, I think the stat that you pointed about him shooting a lot of threes also kind of hints or teases what the team sees his role as, how off the ball they see him. Because when you're shooting 16-3 or whatever it is, whatever the number, I don't know what if you can put the box score up. With the amount, his volume shooting from distance sort of tells me that the Raptors are preparing for him to be more off the ball in the postseason as well, and they do want to see Siakam maybe run the offense a little bit more, because in that situation, obviously Fred off the ball becomes a huge asset for us. And if he's shooting if he's taking 16 shots a game and shooting like 40% from there, that's a massive weapon heading into the postseason. So I think maybe the Raptors are positioning themselves. Maybe they're practicing some of their playoff offense right now, at least the way they're running things. But to answer your question, it's neither of the two. The guy that I sort of liked, and I think like everybody have been liking more and more, is Precious Achiuwa. And you can totally see, like if you didn't watch every Raptor game throughout, because sometimes if you watch all the Raptor games like we do, you sort of miss the growth in a player because it happens so gradually. But if you look at a Precious game from 3 months ago and a Precious game from today, it's not even the same player.
It's totally different.
The way he will pass up a shot, like he did a couple times today with Gary Trent Jr., and then reposition and cut to the rim and basically screen his guy out, use another guy to screen his guy, and then come to the rim for an easy layup or something like that. Happened a couple of times this game. That shows me that it's clicked in his head that he doesn't have to be Pascal 2.0. He can be something else, something the team actually needs. This is the play that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
you just
very nice. Yeah, very nice. I think with Precious Achiuwa specifically, when I look at his game from the beginning of the season, and then I compare it particularly to what we've seen in the last month and a half, really since the All-Star break. If you remember, like I keep saying this, that since that Rising Stars game, Precious has been a totally different player. He got up a lot of shots in that game. His confidence seemed to not waver whatsoever. And then he just came into the Raptors, totally different human being, totally different player. It seems like his role is a lot more defined, Zarar. When I watch Precious now, again, compared to what we saw before, I think my biggest gripe with him was the fact that he was so spatially unaware of where he should be in the court. And I think when he's between those lines now, you watch him, and like you said, on that play where he cut, so it was just witnessing what's around you and knowing where Gary's going to be and knowing where Fred's going to be on the court and knowing, is this a good opportunity for me to cut? I know it sounds very simple in basketball terms, but the Raptors are constantly moving offensively. Even in a half-court setting, they're constantly moving. And then we haven't even talked about the confidence of his three-point shot. I did not expect this at all from Precious Achiuwa in the second half of the season. Honestly, Zarar, if I saw half of what I've seen so far from Precious in terms of consistent performances, I would have been okay with it. I would have been totally okay with it. Yeah, exactly. Precious is like, I can't say that. I'm a rising star now, and I'm taking this three. That's exactly how Precious is moving mentally now. Like he's on a totally different level. It feels like I always see people mention, Zarar, on Raptors Twitter, that Precious, earlier on in the season, his spatial awareness was nowhere close to any other Raptor. It seemed like when he was on the court, he just didn't know where to be, when to cut, where to sit in the corner, when to sit in the corner, when to pass, when not to pass. And now you're seeing from Precious, you're seeing a guy who's just confident in every single move he makes. And the Raptors need that, because the fact of the matter is, they don't have a lot of bench options. They don't. It's one of the worst benches in the league. We've said it before. Svi doesn't really play anymore. Delano doesn't really play anymore. Armani, yes, he got the contract, but he doesn't really play anymore. Utah's out, I believe. It's tough. Khem Birch his knees are they're chalk at this point. Like he cannot move around the court. It's very tough. So what else do you have? You have Thaddeus Young, 12 minutes. He just had a point today, but he did have 3 steals, a couple assists, 3 rebounds. So he was active. And then you have Chris Boucher. So you're really just relying on those 3 guys. You can't rely on Khem Birch, I think, anymore. From what we've seen the last month or so, you just can't rely on a guy like Khem Birch. But getting back to the games, Zarar, one thing I wanted to mention in this game was the fact that the Raptors kind of stamped their identity of what they are. It's a team that generates offense through means of their defensive chaos and their turnover producing ability. It's a team that, Nick Nurse is going to rely on heavily with the starters, even if they look exhausted. I don't know if you were watching, Zarar, at the beginning of the third quarter, but Nick Nurse played all 5 starters for the first 8 minutes, did not give anybody a break. Normally you see 4 or 5 minutes in, maybe Gary will sit, maybe Fred will sit. All 5 guys, first 8 minutes with 1 timeout break in that entire 8 minutes played. And then finally Precious came in. And I think the only reason Precious came in was because the fatigue started to set in. The Raptors' point of attack defense did not look as good. It started to leak a little bit at the end of the third. But I think for me, it's just you're playing an awful team. Orlando, they just lacked any sort of shot creation or ability to create or ability to generate, I should say, advantage creating plays. It's a tough game for Orlando. I know you're at home and you've got the crowd behind you, but it's just what it really came down to was talent, and Orlando they just don't have any. Zarar.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of mentioned like 45 things in that segment.
Sorry,
there.
that was a quick.
I don't know which one to pick off at, but let me close off the one that we were talking about, which is Precious, and I don't know. You said something like Raptors Twitter mentioned about spatial awareness. Like I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I've seen so many people, like Raptors media people, mentioning how like spatial awareness was one of the buzzwords that I always saw with Precious. And it was like, he just doesn't know what he's supposed to do or where he's supposed to be, what's around him, when he should cut, when he should pass. So that's one thing I always saw.
Sometimes I honestly feel we complicate this game a little too much in our analysis. I think one of the things that has changed with Precious is that he does not bring the ball up the court anymore. So right off the bat, he's already in a much better position to read the game. Because he doesn't have the responsibility, the burden, not the responsibility, the burden of bringing the ball up the court, the self-imposed burden, I should say, because nobody's asking him to do that. He himself used to do it. So if you bring up the ball, if you bring the ball up the court, and it's like 18 seconds, 16 seconds on the shot clock, now you're wondering, okay, who do I give this ball to, and where do I reposition myself? Because I don't have the skills to actually create with it or actually run a play. It's like, how do I get this hot potato out of my hand? So I think the fact that he's not doing that anymore already gives him a better vantage point to evaluate where he can help.
Yeah, I totally agree. In this specific games, normally at this point we would go player to player, and we already talked about a couple guys who we were proud of. You mentioned Precious, I mentioned Fred, and I mentioned who did I mention? Scottie Barnes as well. A couple guys we didn't talk about are Pascal Siakam, who's probably been the most consistent Raptor, I would say, all season long. And then also OG Anunoby, who's obviously back from injury. He's been back for a little while now. He went 4 for 8, 14 points, plus 17. With the rest of the starters, Gary, Pascal, and OG, did you see anything from those three where you could go, I mean, what?
Again, as I said earlier, like I'm just looking at what can bite us in the postseason, right? At this point, because I want to succeed in the postseason. The postseason is everything at the end of the day. So what do we learn from Gary's mid-range jumper seems to be a little off, even though when it's so clean. I think he's definitely improved in creating clean looks for himself in the 18-foot range than he did earlier in the season. Earlier in the season, he was very much sort of kind of struggling to create quality shots. Now I think he's found a mechanism to get quality shots, but he doesn't seem to be making them, even when they're sort of wide open. So that's a little concerning. The other thing that I notice is that we're so heavily reliant on Pascal right now. Yeah. That if Pascal has a poor game, again in the postseason where the game is slower, and he has sort of I've almost have successfully erased the memory of the Boston series from my head, but
I'm getting there. I'm almost there, Zarar. I'm getting there.
Reference. If he struggles like that and the game slows down, that's when the Raptors will be in trouble,
Mhm.
right? So I'm trying to convince myself that the Raptors don't need to be a good half-court team in order to succeed in the postseason. And Lewis made an excellent point when he was on last night. He said a team like Miami, which is below average in their half-court offense, he just doesn't see the Raptors losing to a team that's below average in their half-court offense. And I tend to agree with that assessment. I just think there are other teams that are actually much better in their half-court offense who have the ability to slow the game down and are careful with the ball, aka Boston, which can give the Raptors trouble. Which goes back to yesterday's point that for the Raptors, Philadelphia is probably the team that you want to face, or maybe Miami.
I would love that. I would love that.
Just because Philadelphia traded freaking their bench, their main ball handler essentially, and I can see them struggling. So Philly, please. How about you? Do you agree with that? Generally, like we want Philly here.
Yeah, definitely. I'm all aboard Philadelphia. I think James Harden, we're finally starting to see all of that Houston Rockets usage early on in his career just bite him in the ass. Like he's at the point now where his explosion in his legs is gone. He cannot finish at the rim like he's so accustomed to. He's obviously not drawing fouls at the same rate. Some people will say that's because of the new NBA rules or whatever it is. Some people will say that's James Harden. I think both are partially correct. And then Joel Embiid, he is Joel Embiid. I'd probably consider him at this point, Zarar, a top 5 player in the world. And I think I'm at the point where I can put him in that conversation. I don't know if you're there yet, but
I'm not a big Embiid fan. I have never been a big Embiid fan. I mean, I see the talent, but I think he's completely unproven in the postseason. And I think he moans a lot. He complains a lot. His body language is not great. Obviously, I don't know what the hell's going on inside the locker room and all that, but just based on his body language, I can't see that being a rallying cry for his teammates.
I mean, he's shot 36% in the last, I think it was 10 or so games versus the Raptors spanning over the last few years. So Nick Nurse clearly has a solution for Philadelphia. If you look at the playoffs, Raptors are getting further and further away from the Cleveland Cavaliers at the 7th seed. I believe I saw someone tweet. I don't know if it was like an April Fool's thing or whatever it was, but I saw someone tweet that the Raptors are guaranteed to not be in the play-in anymore after the Cavs lost last night and then the Raptors win tonight. I don't know if that's 100% true. Chris, I don't know if you have time, if you could fact check that really quick, but that would be good news. I want to stay far, 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 far away, Zarar, from the Boston Celtics. Their switchability defensively scares the living hell out of me.
And it's that, and it's also the same problem that we've always had with them is that they have good ball handlers who match the Raptors' length and can see over our defense, especially if Fred is in the game. If you remember the Boston series, they had Fred guarding Tatum. That did not work well, even though Fred is an amazing defender. So maybe the outcome will be different this time because Fred has, grown as a player in the last 2 years. So maybe we shouldn't feel so,
Yeah. Plus, you're adding one more wing. Plus, you're adding one more wing defender with the 7-foot plus wingspan in Scottie Barnes, who's super active defensively. Yeah, he's gonna, falter a little bit mentally on the defensive end. Sometimes he's just gonna completely get out of, and in his, I don't know what it is. Sometimes I watch Scottie Barnes and you watch a great defensive play and then you watch him, he's solid for a few plays and then you're just like, what the hell are you doing, Scottie? So who knows? Raptors might get that, Scottie. You don't know, but I in my opinion, it goes, I'm trying to avoid obviously Milwaukee. I haven't even mentioned Milwaukee. Everyone's mentioning them in the comments. I don't want to, if I'm saying I don't want to go anywhere near the Celtics, I really want to get far away from the Milwaukee Bucks. That's the last team I probably want to face in the entire league. I just keep me away from Giannis. In my opinion, he is solidifying his case for one of the best, if not the best players in the world. Miami, I don't know. They've been struggling a bit this month, but I still think the Raptors, they match up pretty well against the Raptors. Pretty good.
So here's my I'll take a position on this one. I'll take a long-term position on this. It's a long call. So I totally get why you wouldn't want to play Milwaukee from a basketball matchup perspective. It's a nightmare. The guy that scares me there isn't even Giannis. It's Jrue Holiday because he can impact the game in pretty bad ways. But if you think about this Raptor core, any team that has aspirations to win a title has to go through some difficult playoff series, right? They have to go and face matchups that are hairy, and they got to fight through them. It's not ideal. And I feel like if this unit has to grow as a team, a series against Boston or Milwaukee gives them double that playoff test that something like James Harden would give. And I'm not saying James Harden and the Philadelphia 76ers are a gimme. I'm just saying that you feel more of a Boston-Milwaukee series than maybe you would feel a lesser opponent. For sure, Boston would be a freaking must-see TV that everybody would watch. So maybe we just want Boston just for the pure entertainment value that it would provide compared to Joel Embiid.
Exactly. And I think the ideal scenario is you're the 4 seed for the Raptors. You get that home court advantage. Philly drops to the 5th seed. You get home court advantage. You play them. Let's say you get out of that series. You're playing the 1-8. And if Brooklyn's the 8 and Miami's the 1, I would much rather want to face them than one of Milwaukee or Boston. So now you're looking at that series. And I don't know, Zarar, can Kyrie play in Canada or not? It still doesn't seem like it. So I don't know if that's going to change. Let's say Brooklyn comes out of that series. And if it's Miami's going to be exhausted. I mean, Durant's going to give them a headache all series long. And Kyrie as well. Kyrie can play both in New York and Miami now, right? So that is the hypothetical I've been stuck to and I've been hoping for. That 4 seed. Raptors need to get there and hope for Philly to drop to the 5th.
But here's the thing, man. Like, we're talking from a Raptors perspective. I bet you, if you talk to any of those teams, they don't want to face the Raptors.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of, maybe Boston may want to look at it that way, but even them, I don't think they would prefer to face the Raptors than anybody else. I think they would rather face, honestly, the Bulls or the Sixers, like many. So I think the surprise factor is with the Raptors. They won't. There's not going to be high expectations for them to win any in the first round because they will be underdogs from a playoff positioning perspective. Most likely, the pressure will be on the other team. So it's found money as the Raptors enter this postseason. The pressure will be entirely on some of the big, especially like
100%.
Miami, which had a big offseason. Are positioned to win a title. The expectations are there that they're going to go deep. Milwaukee, defending champs. Those guys are the ones that will have the pressure on them, not the Raptors. So the Raptors should be able to play more freely.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the, let's say we fast forward a month or a month and a half from now, and the Raptors are out of the playoffs, first round exit, they take whatever team to 7. Let's say it's Philly or it's Chicago or whoever it is. Could be Boston, right? If they stay in the 6 and Boston's at the 3. I don't think anyone's going to look at that and be like, this is a complete failure for the Raptors this season. You got to the playoffs. You were extremely competitive when your roster was strongest. Yeah. I think the Raptors are coming into this playoffs as that one underdog, like you said, that nobody wants to play. Nobody. So all 7 teams you see there, from Brooklyn all the way up to Miami, not including the Raptors, no one's trying to run into the Raptors. I've seen national articles written about how no team wants to run into the Toronto Raptors. It's a long team. It's a team full of defensive pests. It's a team that when they're hot, they can shoot as well as anyone. They have a young budding star in Scottie Barnes. Pascal Siakam's been all NBA. Fred, if you get his legs back and he plays at an all-star level, goodness gracious. Like, then you start thinking about, okay, does this team have a shot at the second, third round of the playoffs? I don't want to get everybody's hopes up, but you guys know me. I'm usually dubbed as the pessimist of the wrap-up crew, but I'm here to be an optimist, and I really do genuinely believe that if Pascal plays at that level, that All-NBA level, and you get everybody else playing at their baseline level, you're looking at a very good Raptors team that has a shot at an Eastern Conference Finals, and then it just depends from there, right? You just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, when we ran into the Warriors in 2019, I mean, I didn't say we were going to beat Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay. I'm sure most people watching didn't either. And then you just don't know what's going to happen, right? So I saw a comment earlier on, I think Francis posted it. I'm scrolling all the way up, but there's been so many comments. He said something along the lines of, the Giannis of 2022 is not the same as the Giannis a few years ago. Like, this is the Giannis a couple years ago won an MVP, and I know that's great and all, but this is a totally different player.
What does that mean? I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. Like, could you explain that? I mean, to me,
I watched.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah.
I watched him, Zarar, versus the Brooklyn Nets this week, and in my mind, I was thinking, the best players in the world always, elevate when they play the opposing best players in the world. Giannis, when he sees Kevin Durant, he saw him last year in the playoffs, played out of his mind. Saw him this week, played absolutely out of his mind. Was the best player on the court, wasn't even close. This is what the best players in the world do. And this is why I genuinely believe Giannis is the best player in the world as we speak, which is crazy. I know a lot of people will say that's, it could be Jokic. Wouldn't argue with you. Could be Durant. Wouldn't argue with you. LeBron's having a very good season amidst, being surrounded by, dumpsters. But I think with Giannis, I watch him, and I've watched him so much this year, and I'm just like, this guy is totally unstoppable.
Whatever, man. I mean, I don't want to talk about Giannis. He's good.
I do. I love him. No, I'm
okay. All right. Fine. I mean, like okay. Let's talk about a hypothetical Milwaukee matchup.
Yes.
Okay. Obviously, Giannis is a problem. The defensive responsibility will be rotated across Gary, across Siakam, OG, and Barnes probably. I think Barnes will get an education in playoff basketball if he goes against him. I think Milwaukee, as much as they are defending champions, I think the Raptors are still in their minds a little bit. Again, it's one of those teams that if you ask them, who do you want to face? They're not going to say the Raptors. I highly doubt it because there's a history there that Nurse has solved for Giannis. I know it happened like 3 years ago, but it has happened. So why would you maybe want that? Again, as I said earlier, my main problem with Milwaukee is Jrue Holiday, who can essentially terrorize us on the perimeter and disrupt. First of all, he can kill our transition offense because those guys get back on D. So all the free points that you're used to seeing are going to diminish. Second, the guy doesn't really turn the ball over carelessly. So all the points that you kind of saw in today's game against Magic, they're gone. So they have some weapons on the perimeter that essentially force the Raptors to play a style of basketball that they would rather not.
Yeah.
Philadelphia necessarily has that on them. Boston to some degree does. Even Chicago I'd be cool with, but not that it's possible. But that's where I am with that.
The thing with Jrue,
and Trace 124 is right. Jrue is a bad matchup with Fred. He will neutralize him and then some.
Yeah, he's going to disrupt everything they do on the perimeter. The sets they try and run, these little dribble handoffs, all of that stuff is going to get disrupted. And the Bucks in transition, probably the best team, maybe beside the Suns. In transition in the league. They will absolutely demolish. We haven't even mentioned Chris Middleton, who's a bona fide all-star. They have very good depth. Bobby Portis, you could see in these highlights. George Hill, who just seems like he's just never going to retire. He's just been on a new contender every single season, George. Okay, we get it. The Bucks are a very good team. Didn't even mention Brook Lopez. I saw someone mention earlier in the comments, Brook Lopez. When he's on, arguably the best rim defender in the league. That's not a joke. Metrics support that. The eye test supports that. Nothing gets past Brook Lopez at the rim. If you think Giannis is a good defender, just wait for Fred to run into Brook Lopez or Pascal for that matter. It's not fun. The Bucks will not be fun. But
yeah, I mean, do you want to come back to the game today? Some Raptors comments. We talked. I think somebody mentioned. I had this comment starred actually. Actually, no, I didn't. I missed it. It was about the Thad Young impact, and somebody had kind of mentioned that. Are we seeing a better Precious because of Thad Young? And I don't know where our investigative reporters are in the Raptors. Is something going on there? Like, what is Thad Young's influence on the young core? We've seen his influence on the court for sure. Because the guy has kind of fit in seamlessly. He's even hit a couple of threes. Plays good defense. That's good speed. All that good stuff, right? What you expect of a veteran. Yeah. The ball doesn't stick with him. He sort of seems to know what the next natural pass is. He can plug into any spot. But I wonder, what a guy like him brings to, as you said earlier, Sahal, the worst bench in the league, one of the youngest benches in the league. What a guy like that would bring into that locker room. I wonder if we have any information from the young players on if there's any impact from Thad Young.
Well, yeah, I think the one hole for the Raptors roster has been, what your core 5 guys are. I mean, before Precious started going crazy, you know what the core five was, and it was who you saw start tonight. It was Gary, Fred, Scottie, OG, and Pascal. And then it was just a matter of finding who else would fit into that puzzle, right? And I think you looked at the rest of the bench, and it's a very, very, very young bench, Zarar. Like, I don't have to name Delano. They just got Armani. Before that was, what's the guy's name? DJ Wilson. Their bench is very young. Chris Boucher, I know he's, I think, 29. But
that's it, man.
Still,
that's really it.
Yeah, but it's a young bench, and I think you needed that veteran presence. I don't know if it's directly correlated to what Precious has been doing. I think more than anything, Precious has finally got to the comfort level. It's taken him a while. I think it's taken like 50 or so games, 50, 60 games to finally get to that comfort level where, okay, I think I know what Coach Nurse needs from me. I'm going to go out there, do what I need to do. I'm not going to overstep my boundaries like he was doing quite a bit earlier on the season. I know what my role is. I know what the guys need from me. I know what shots I can take finally without Pascal rolling his eyes or, Fred looking at me like, what the hell are you doing? I think it's just a comfort level. And now Precious is there. And this is a really good point from Ryan, the Chris Boucher podcast. He says, Chris Boucher pod really emphasized how Thad talks to the young guys and simplifies the game, keeps them playing smart and putting the work in. This is what the Raptors needed. Like, no one can do that for you on the Raptors bench currently. I'm sorry, Khem. Like, Khem Birch is not doing that for you. And before that, Chris Boucher, he's young in basketball years. I think his first season with the Raptors, I believe he was like 25 years old or 24 years old. Like he didn't come in as a 19, 20-year-old, right? So
absolutely. And remember, Khem Birch has, I believe, 2 years of playoff experience. And they're both been like very short series, I believe. So it's not like he can bring that, perspective onto the team. So it really falls all on Thad, because all the guys you mentioned have very limited or zero playoff experience. So you're, man, I can't even remember a Raptor team heading into the postseason with this little playoff experience. I'm trying to think back to like maybe the first couple of Bosch years, but I think even then we had guys who had been there. Like this might be the least experienced playoff team heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot. I mean, you're relying on the guys who were there during the 2019 championship, and Fred and Pascal, and OG, who obviously was injured during the championship run, but was still there. But yeah, I just looked it up now. Thaddeus Young, 45 total games in the playoffs. So he's been there, done that. 15 years in the league. A guy who's been pretty healthy in those 15 years. A guy we didn't talk about that much was Gary Trent Jr. And here's a tweet from our friend, one of our hosts, Oren Weisfeld. He says, our focus and our motivation has never been to get into a play-in game. That's never been our goal, Gary Trent Jr. says. Yeah, I mean, when you guys are fully healthy like you are now, that's probably the idea, right? So I think if the Raptors were walking into the playoffs, a hobble team, which they kind of are, I guess you could say Fred's a little injured, Pascal's a little burnt out. But I think they're fully healthy now. There's no excuses. You're coming into the playoffs. One of the things I think, Zarar, that we haven't talked about a lot is I'm kind of worried that maybe Nick Nurse is not going to give, the core guys the rest that they probably need. Maybe we'll get to that point, but if they're just running out for 40 minutes until the end point of the season and then the playoffs begin, I'm a little bit worried.
Yeah, I mean, this reminds me shades of Kyle Lowry in the DeMar DeRozan years, how we kind of grinded him in the last 10 games of the season, playing 38 minutes, 39 minutes, Dwayne Casey just killing him in meaningless games against Minnesota on a Wednesday night on the road when we're like 4 games beyond the closest team to us. When I look at the box score today, I know Pascal 43, Van Vliet 39, Gary Trent 40. And it's not like there weren't opportunities in this game where you could have reduced their minutes. Now, it's always kind of weird when you're on YouTube and you're second guessing a championship coach, but the math doesn't really add up here. Maybe you're gonna say playing Fred 34 instead of 39 minutes doesn't really make that much of a difference. And in those 5 minutes that you could have saved, Fred got up like 4 extra practice shots for the postseason. You could make that argument.
Yeah.
But what's making this kind of a little bit harder to stomach is when there are opportunities to rest and we don't take them. I get it. Like if you want to win the game and you got to, get your starters in, make sure that the job gets done, play them heavy minutes. I get it. But tonight there were definitely opportunities where you easily could have bought rest.
Yeah. I mean, the Raptors were up, like I mentioned earlier, 15, 16, 17 points at multiple times in the second half. Yes, Orlando did cut it down to 9-10 points at one point or another. But I mean, those are the moments I think when you get that lead right back up, just trot out one of those guys. If it's a Delano Banton, trot him out for 3-4 minutes, see what you can get. If nothing changes, take him back out. But then I look at the other side of it, Zarar, and I understand a bit what Nick Nurse is trying to do, and I think he's finally sticking to his those 9 or so guys. I genuinely think, Zarar, if Khem Birch keeps this up and these really awful looking performances, to be quite honest, I don't know if he's going to be a part of the playoff rotation at all. I think
I don't. The only so two things. So again, I'm trying to understand why Nurse might play heavy minutes, and I think and Ryan made another good point, is that maybe he sees the team is coasting, and he's not going to tolerate it. Yeah. And his way of enforcing that, hey, you can't coast here, is to play heavy minutes. So maybe it's the minutes that the starters are playing are not, full on 100% effort and all that. And he doesn't like that. As Oren said a while back, Nick Nurse is kind of like an immigrant dad, like he doesn't want to see any laziness anywhere. So I get that. And the second point that I was going to make, I actually just forgot. So it'll come back to me. I forget what it was.
Yeah. And like I said,
Khem. Sorry,
yes,
Khem.
Yes. Okay, I got you back.
Okay. Khem Birch. The best thing I can say about that guy is he probably is the only Raptor. Maybe Precious now is getting better at it, but he probably is the best Raptor on the back end of a pick and pop to finish around the 7 to 8 foot range in a mini Serge Ibaka roll like that.
I like that little floater he has.
He opens that up. So today, if you saw this game, and I can't blame you if you didn't, there were a lot of cases where Fred or Pascal tried to kind of make a bounce pass on a pick and roll, which got intercepted or hit somebody's foot. It was not a pretty sight. I think that's where Khem sort of knows your favorite terms, Sahal, spatial awareness.
Nice.
On how to catch the ball, how to go up with it and finish with a high percentage look. That's probably his best skill set for me right now.
Yeah, and I think when you have Khem Birch at his best, which I think came almost right when the Raptors acquired him last year, when you have that Khem Birch, totally different story. I mean, at that point, I'm saying give him 15 to 20 minutes a game. Like you said, around the rim, he's very efficient. Like it's not even really underneath the rim or 1 to 3 feet away. We're talking like 7 to 10 feet away. Like that little floater he has.
Yes.
It seems like it always goes in, right? Yeah. So when you can score from that 7 to 10 foot range, it opens up everything else for the guys who want to cut to the basket and actually want to finish underneath the rim, or the guys who just want to stretch the floor, like Gary, Fred, Pascal sometimes. And then you have the OG and Scottie, who are probably your best, I want to say, like cutters on the team and finishers. But I think for me, I look at this game from a micro perspective and overall what the Raptors have remaining from a macro perspective, and I go, Nick Nurse almost has to find a way to, yes, stay competitive. Yes, give the guys, an ample amount of minutes so they learn how to play with one another. Someone mentioned in the comments how many minutes have those core 5 played together. I'm not 100% sure. Chris, maybe if you can find that. Adam asked that. Chris, maybe if you could find that. And I don't know if you could do that. I'm kind of putting you on the spot. But it's not many. It's not as many as some other teams. I mean, the Phoenix Suns have been one of the healthier teams in the league. They have played so much together. They're starting 5. And that builds consistency. And I think that's what Nick Nurse is trying to do. So that's why I'm kind of on the fence with the whole minute thing. It's like, I see what Nick Nurse is trying to do on one side. He's trying to get those guys to play with one another, build that chemistry. And then on the bench, Thaddeus, Chris Boucher, and Precious, those are probably going to be the 3 guys he relies on in the playoffs. I mean, past that, you don't really have much else. If you're going to deal with this Khem Birch, maybe you sit Khem Birch for a little if you're going to give him
No,
4 minutes.
I think somebody, by the way, I'm, I don't come on the show much, but I mean,
Yes.
I'm very, very impressed by some of the quality of the observations in the comments.
Oh yeah, wrap up families, they're all geniuses.
Yeah. Is his Birch's screen setting? He probably is the best screen setter away from the at the perimeter that the Raptors have. Probably.
Yeah, for sure. That's another thing that Khem Birch I think brings. It's just the lack of mobility that I'm seeing from Khem is probably the thing that hurts me the most when I watch him, because this is not the Khem we're used to, and it's a knee thing. Like if you've ever had a knee injury and you play basketball and you're in the middle of recovering and you can play, but you're not 100% there yet, it just completely diminishes your ability to move. And we're seeing that with Khem, his ability to jump. He's always been a pretty high IQ guy. Like he knows when to screen. See, look, I'm going to mention spatial awareness one more time. He knows where to be on the court. If Fred needs a screen, he's coming up, setting a very good screen. And if you can set a very good screen, Zarar, for a guy like Fred, he just needs an inch of room. Like, Fred's at the point now where I wouldn't say he's Steph Curry level with the off the dribble three-point shot, but when he's hot, he's just about there. So
I keep like bringing an argument, then fighting against that argument. So yeah. I'm just trying to see what's going on. Yes, Khem will set you good screens, but then on the other side, remember it's weird because if the Raptors are going to win a playoff series, it's going to be because of their defense. So you have to load up defensively because that is your best chance of winning an actual playoff series. And the thing with Birch is that he's a good defender. I don't think he's a poor defender. He's probably average in his stats, I would imagine, maybe a little above average too. Is that if you play him, you reduce your switchability on the other end. Mm-hmm. You can't if you go Achiuwa versus I'm my own devil's advocate.
That's a good point.
You reduce the switchability on the defense, and next thing you know, you're not forcing as many turnovers. Guys are getting around screens and into the paint. So factoring in Khem Birch's playing time has to be more than all the good points that we've argued here. There's almost an opportunity cost that you have to pay by playing him.
It's also the fact that Zarar, his replacement is usually Precious Achiuwa, who his switchability defensively is incredible. And now he can stretch the floor for you. Khem cannot do that. If Khem's wide open, you get 3 passes from a very good set.
I don't know. I disagree with you. Precious Achiuwa is stretching the floor for you. I think if you ask any head coach in the NBA and you ask them, hey, are you cool with Precious Achiuwa taking a 3 from the wing? They'd be like, go ahead, take it.
Precious Achiuwa, since the All-Star break, Chris,
I don't care. I don't care about the numbers. I don't care about the numbers. I'm just telling you, every coach will be more than happy to see Precious Achiuwa take 3s rather than all the other options the Raptors have.
Which is why I think he's been scoring at a very good rate recently, because he's been hitting that 3. And I don't know if that's going to happen in the playoffs. I don't know. It very well cannot happen in the playoffs. That ball in the corner, that ball on the elbow, when it gets to Precious, he might miss it, since the All-Star break. There you go. Chris, you're quick with it too.
Oh my
31
God.
for 77 since the All-Star break. That's 77 threes. That's a lot, Zarar.
Okay, Andrew. That's not what I meant, man.
I'm just saying. I'm not saying from a general sense, or I'm saying just relative to Khem Birch. Khem Birch gets that top of the key 3. He's not even going to attempt it. That's a problem for the Raptors.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, man. Okay, there's people correcting me, so I will bow out of this one.
He's gonna seed, guys.
All I'm saying is that if you're a coach on the other end,
you want Precious to shoot that. You're right.
You're not going to be too upset about a possession that ends up with Precious Achiuwa attempting a 3-point shot. That's it.
For sure. We are 44 minutes in. Honestly, felt like 20 minutes, Zarar. I don't know how we've done that so quick.
I don't know. Do we do a Taxman?
That's what I was gonna say. So let's get into Taxman. If you guys can see from the top of the screen above myself and Zarar, you can call VJ Verma at 416-243-2912. That's 416-243-2912. You guys can visit canamtax.com. You know the deal by now. It's tax season. One of my best friends is an accountant. He goes by the name of Asad. Zarar knows him pretty well from the Raptors Republic tournaments. He is an accountant, and he is not having a fun time. He is totally busy. He can barely watch Raptors games. He's a massive Raptors fan. If you follow him on Twitter, you would know that. Guy tweets like 10,000 times during games. He's an accountant. And normally I'd be like, you know what, guys? Go to my friend who's an accountant. But guess what? Vijay Verma is my best friend. And you need to go to Vijay Verma to file your taxes, even if you just have questions. Zarar, I know you go through canamtax.com as well. And I think for me, personally, yeah, you're right, Ryan. 100%. Our books are... You need to talk to Zarar about that, though. But yeah, 416-243-2912 or canamtax.com. Even if you just have a simple question about taxes, they don't even have to file them for you. Just ask them questions. Then we'll get there. Who is your tax man of the game? I feel like that was an infomercial at Zarar. So who is your tax man? I feel like we didn't get to the most important part.
On the ad read from the start of the season.
Yeah, I did. Now we're just totally like freestyling.
I'm gonna go with a guy that I think I saw yesterday's show with you and Lewis or not you, was it you? I don't know. Lewis was there. Lewis and Aiden. Yeah. And the guy that I want to highlight is OG Anunoby, who I think is so versatile in his fit with the Raptors. So what I mean by that is, like, if you saw today's game, there's like at least 3 occasions where he basically repositioned himself to make the pass for his teammates easier, and then, which was underneath the rim, and then he had the intelligence really to actually know that the defender that's guarding him will easily fall for a fake. He knows that this is exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Strong, Zarar. Oh my goodness.
On point clip, right? Just knows that he realizes how strong he is, and maybe he didn't realize that the last couple of years. This year he understands that he doesn't have to fade, he doesn't have to give up space, he doesn't have to contort his shot. He can use his strength and go straight up and finish very, very cleanly. And this guy, man, I'm telling you, if he had a high usage rate, he would produce pound for pound just as efficiently as any other Raptor. I am convinced of that. He doesn't have a pull-up game, which has improved since.
He tried it though at the end of the game. Did you see it at the end of the game? That little step back.
At the end of the game. I'm talking overall. He doesn't have a great pull-up game, but his post-up game is fine. He's hitting his corner threes now. He's also driving more. Like he's for that. There was like a 15-game stretch where he sort of went back into just being a kind of corner shooting guy. But I think now he's back and attacking the rim more. Everything this guy does, he does professionally and with high quality, kind of like Vijay Verma.
There we go. See, look, he came all the way around for that. I love it. Yeah, I'm totally okay with OG being our tax man. Chris mentioned in our little private chat how much ground OG made up on that step back 3. It felt like it started at the free throw line. He somehow ended up back at the 3-point line with that massive step back. But I think just overall, one of the things we keep mentioning, each time we do one of these live shows, Zarar, I've seen you in the comments as well, where we look forward to what the Raptors, what's incoming. And now we're at the point where the playoffs are coming, right? So we talk about matchups, we talk about all of that. We didn't talk about one thing, and it concerns OG. And I think one of the most important things Nick Nurse is trying to do before this season ends is to get OG comfortable with this offense. He's missed a lot of time this season. He's been in and out. And if you can get OG at a level where he's efficiently scoring anywhere from 14 to 20 points per game, even more, if OG's definitely capable of more. But in that range, efficiently, obviously going to give you that all NBA defense. I mean, that's all you can ask from OG. And his role too, Zarar, it's one of those things where he's not tasked with playmaking like Pascal is, or to run around like a squirrel like Fred does off the ball and finally find an open 3 with 2 inches of space. He doesn't do all of that. OG's role is pretty simplified relative to the rest of the Raptors, and that's why I think he finds such simple consistency in it. And I think if you can get OG at a consistent level in the playoffs, nobody talks about OG simply because he hasn't been on the floor consistently this season. But if you can get a consistent OG into the playoffs, Yeah, the Raptors are a totally different level. I feel like I haven't even watched the Raptors really at full strength. Even now, like I'm watching them like, oh, but it's Orlando. And I feel like now we're finally at the point where, okay, OG's finally getting his footing back, hitting his shot. He was efficient today, I believe. I think he was 4 for 8
Yeah,
today.
it's also kind of weird when does it feel right when you call OG a role player? Like
No,
it just doesn't feel right.
he's not even a glorified role player. I think he's a legitimate. I mean, if OG's in an Orlando Magic jersey, he's the best player in Orlando, bar none. It's not
Right.
even close. So, I mean, if you could say that about an entire NBA team, he's pretty damn good.
He's one of those guys that I would imagine other teams are looking at and eyeing and saying, "Oh my God, that guy! If we can just extract that guy from Toronto, he can be our number one guy, and we can
Yeah.
groom him into a number one guy."
Yeah.
He has that level of talent, and you never. I mean, as Aiden said a couple of days ago, you never hear a peep from him. Always professional. Van Hoot says Swiss Army knife, whatever it is, right? I cannot say a negative thing about OG. Because he does whatever the team has asked for him, and he does it professionally and efficiently. I don't know what else you can ask for the guy. And I'm convinced, and I don't have any, maybe there are some stats to back this up. If you increase his usage rate, he will produce just as efficiently. It'll scale. Give him more touches, his production will increase in a even more than a linear, whatever. He'll produce more than just a linear trend.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and that's, for me, probably the most encouraging thing about the Raptors. You've gotten Scottie Barnes to play most of the games this year. You've gotten Pascal Siakam to the point where now on a national level, I'm seeing like Miami Heat writers talk about, okay, Pascal's probably an all NBA player this year. He's starting to get that national attention now. So you look at every Raptor, people know Fred was an all-star. He was one of the best players in the Eastern Conference in the first half. He's still almost there. But OG is that he's that X factor, man. And if he's consistent, Raptors ceiling goes to a whole nother level. But we're patient. Yeah, like Enrico says, he says he's a couple weeks off a broken finger. Imagine playing basketball a few weeks after breaking your finger on your dominant hand. Yeah.
Sahal sprained his ankle 4 years ago. He's still not the same.
Hey, man, it was my quad. No, I'm joking. No, but yeah, jamming your fingers one thing, guys. Breaking your fingers a whole different. It's a whole different ball game. I've broken my big toe.
I have a friend of mine who likes to play basketball, but for the life of him, he can't keep his fingers like relaxed. So every time he plays, he jams it, and you know how a jammed finger is like the absolute worst. So he can't play basketball anymore because he has not figured out that his hand can also be a soft thing.
Uses his hand as a weapon.
Yeah, like this.
Yeah, exactly. This is Oren again. He says Van Vliet says he is making progress, quote unquote, with the knee, but isn't where he would like it to be. And then again, or probably where it needs to be. I see when this season ends, Zarar, this being like a cleanup procedure thing in the knee for
holy shit, man. Okay, so I mean, I got to go back to our earlier conversation about Van Vliet's playing time. I mean, if the knee is 100%, should he be playing 40 minutes a game, or does it really not matter? I don't know.
So Kyle mentions this quite a bit, and I think Fred answered that, I want to say like a week ago, where he said, honestly, the minute total isn't what's going to bother me. It is what it is at this point. You can play me 25 minutes or 40 minutes. It's one of those things that it's going to be sore regardless after the game. Like, it's not a varying level of soreness. You probably let Nick Nurse know that. The medical team probably let Nick Nurse know that, which is why you're seeing Fred constantly in that 40-minute mark. But I mean, that's a very specific question. Hamdi Yusuf, he says, how tall are you, Sahal? I'm 5'2". Yeah, I'm 5'2".
Yeah. He asked you that question, not Oren.
Exactly. See, this is what I wanted. We can do the Oren slander when he's not here. We can do it when he's here. I love it. No,
Oren's like 5'7". He's like 5'7".
Yeah, Oren's like, yeah, he's like 5'7" minus.
But why can't you say how tall you are? Like, is that some sort of secret that? Like,
no, I'm 6'2". It's nothing special. It's just I thought that was an oddly specific question to ask me. I've never gotten
I think he has the same.
Like that.
Okay. Anyways, yeah, maybe he's a friend of yours. I don't know.
I have no clue. 6'2". So taller than Fred. This is what remains for the Raptors schedule for the rest of the season. Orlando obviously was tonight, Friday, April 1st. How many hours do we got left? An hour and 45 minutes until midnight. Yes. And then we don't get to see any more April Fool's jokes. I love it. April Fool's the most overrated thing, I think, on the planet, by the way. Sunday is the big game everybody's Zarar is looking forward to. Kyle Lowry returns home, 7 p.m. game. Every Raptor fan, I think, in existence is going to be watching that game. Guys, do not cry. Have a tissue box nearby just in case. There are a lot of people who love Kyle Lowry, me included. Kyle is... I've mentioned this so many times before he even came to the Raptors. He was one of my favorite players. Houston, Memphis, Villanova. I've watched Kyle from the beginning. I've loved him. I was one of those people in Facebook way back when screaming at Kevin McHale to start Kyle Lowry over Goran Dragic. Both ended up being good players. You got Atlanta. You got Philly, Zarar. You got Houston at home. 4 straight home games, which is nice. And then you finish off in Madison Square Garden versus the Knicks, who have been absolutely horrific this year.
The Knicks started off okay.
They did. And then it all just fell apart.
Yeah. This article, guys. I mean, if you haven't read it yet, I'm sure everybody has. But if you haven't, check it out. Players Tribune, one of the best sites on the internet, man, to be honest with you. Like, great article from the heart.
Amazing. We love Kyle Lowry here, Wrap Up family. I think we'll wrap it up there. We're almost at an hour. I did not expect that. You probably didn't expect that after a Orlando Magic win. This is the last thing.
5'7". I'm 5'7.5", maybe. Yeah. He's got it right.
Wow, Mike. Mike said he seems like a 5'7". Are you just hearing his voice and that's what you're judging it off of? What are we doing here? No, Zarar's not 5'2". Guys, can we stop with the height jokes? Like, we can only do this when Oren's here, okay? Before you guys leave us tonight, shout out to Ryan, by the way. He said this in the comments all night long. Like, comment, and subscribe to the Raptors Republic channel. Zarar, we recently hit a milestone on subscribers, did we not? I think it was.
Did we? 7,000. Yeah, we hit 7,000. It's still low. I don't know why it's low. It needs to be higher. I don't know.
I don't know what. I'm not going to blame you guys, but maybe I should, because you guys need to start talking to your family members and all that stuff, the people across the way. Turn on the post notifications if you haven't already, guys, so you can join us after every single Raptors game. We're going to be here during the playoffs as well, so it's going to be fun. This was the Wrap Up Your Raptors Republic post-game live show where your Raptors defeated the Magic, the lowly Orlando Magic. This live show was produced by Chris Howson-Jan, our man in the background. That was it for myself and Zarar. Guys, we miss you, but guess what? We'll see you Sunday night. It's going to be a lot of fun. Kyle Lowry is back in Toronto. I can't wait.